This should tell you when we're live, and it should be saying that right now because we are live. Welcome to the Free Culture Sports Show, the show for the busy sports enthusiasts because we try to jam pack as much in as we can. I just came up with like that tagline this morning before I had had coffee, so if it's terrible, then we can blame it on that. Hopefully, I'll get smarter as the show goes on. Right there. So just before we jump in, we are still looking for fans from Aston Villa, Everton, Hull, Manchester City, Newcastle, and Sunderland, and we still have our Patreon at the easy URL at patreon.com/FCSS. The hard part about that is how do you spell Patreon? It's Patreo. All right, so we're here to talk about MLS today, and we've got a special guest because of the MLS Fantasy results. I won the regular season. I had no idea there was anything but a regular season. Well, it turns out we have playoffs, and Nate won the playoffs. So, Nate, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And there's some more notes in the show notes, but I'm not going to belittle Evan with his place in the standings. So.
Spoiler, it was last.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing I paid too much attention to. I'm not too worried.
So, Nate, I don't know if you want to talk about the Sounders when we get into the actual playoffs. I wanted to give you the chance now to say as much about the Sounders season as you wanted to now, but if you want to do that in context of the playoffs, we can do that too. So the floor is yours.
Well, I mean, I feel like I should first start off with requesting a moment of silence for Chivas USA. Now that they're dead.
Yes, but they've already been reborn though. So
is it really reborn? I mean, they're doing the dispersal draft and the new name, the new location ish.
Yeah, I mean the thing is it was like one day. Okay, Chivas is no more. I don't know if it was the very next day or if it was 2 days later, but it was like MLS awards a new franchise to LA. I'm like, all right, guys. It's like this is like the biggest. I mean, all of the like new clubs seem to leak. I mean, people knew it was Atlanta before that was announced. NYCFC was known before that was announced. It was pretty much known that Orlando was going to get their team. I mean, the only thing that's been like this is going to happen that hasn't happened is Miami, and I think as soon as they lock down their stadium, that will happen. That's my 2 cents.
Well. So. Yeah, but we'll see. I'm not a fan of the whole send a sports team to Miami thing to begin with, but
well, yeah, I mean that's probably an issue for another show about Miami and their soccer landscape and the Fort Lauderdale team and there's already a Miami team and all that's just a big mess, and which I am not prepared for. I can make offhand comments as I just did, but
yeah,
nothing serious I can say about that. So,
but I mean, really, let's be honest. The most important thing is that the Sounders won the Supporters Shield. That's all that really matters.
You know, not only the Supporters Shield, but they have 2 pieces of the treble. So.
Yeah, if only it could have been the quadruple, get that Cascadia Cup. Stupid.
Well, or the quintuple, I guess, because they weren't in the Champions League. So.
Yeah. Well, let's be real honest. The MLS ain't going to win that for a while.
I disagree. I mean, Salt Lake, what they have to do is get over the mental hump of playing in Mexico. I mean, that's what they really need to do. But they're fine when they play the Mexican teams in the U.S. They beat the Mexican teams in the U.S. with some regularity. It's just when they go down to Mexico, then they get obliterated. So.
Well, part of it, too, is I just don't think they take it as seriously as...
That is a huge...
Say like Europe would take the Champions League.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have the coverage. It doesn't have the, the zazz.
No, it definitely does not. But DC United are the top seed in this year. The scheduling is sort of weird because like we're talking about next year's, like the MLS season does not align with the CONCACAF season. So like.
Which is another problem, but that's an issue for another day too.
Yeah. Well, since we're talking about all these issues that we don't have time for, let's talk about an issue that we do have time for, and that's the playoffs. Just very briefly, the play-in games happened earlier this week, so even though we're sort of calling this playoff preview, playoffs have already sort of started. Dallas beat Vancouver, which I don't think anybody was too shocked about, and New York beat Kansas City, which some people I think were shocked about, but anybody that actually paid attention to the MLS was not shocked about that result.
Yeah.
So Kansas City are the reigning champions, but they were decimated with injuries and just tired after the World Cup, and they were just not very good at the end of the season. So let's jump into the predictions here. So Nate and I, he said that we disagreed on just about everything. It wasn't everything, as we'll get to in the next one. But this one, I picked the Crew, and both of you guys picked the Revs. So I mean, basically, my deal with the Crew is they've been great at the end of the season. They're on a roll, and the obvious counter to that is that the Revs have been better all season. I mean, they're the 2 seeds. They have more star power. I sort of see that almost as a negative, though, whereas the Crew has really spread around their scoring. You've got 2 people you really need to stop on the Revs. Now, the question is, can they do that? So if one of you wants to take the counterpoint there.
I mean, I just think that the whole momentum argument isn't that good because the Revs have been on just as much of a roll in the last, 2 months. They beat the Crew. They got the star power. I mean, Jones coming to that team kind of turned around their season. I think he's probably one of the X factors there. I just think they can outscore the Crew. That's how they were winning early, and that's how I think they'll keep winning.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, I can offer about 0% input into this until we get to started talking about the Sounders in LA, because those are the only 2 teams I really know anything about. I just picked the Revs because I wanted to do something different. So I picked against one of you in one and against the other one in the other Eastern playoff game. So that's my 2 cents.
Fair enough. We should note that the Revolution only ended up 3 points ahead of the Crew. So, I mean, the MLS is always pretty tight because of the way that the salary cap is handled and the way that they just sort of like steer the DPs towards certain teams in some mysterious way.
Picking names out of an envelope.
Yeah, I think that's actually what happened with Jones. I mean, I don't know if it was literally an envelope, but there was a blind draw. That's how he went to New England instead of Chicago. It's just ridiculous. We can mark that up on a show topic for another day. So the Western Conference 2-3 was LA RSL, and all 3 of us picked LA. I don't know that we need to say much about this, but Evan, you said that you would have something to say about LA, so here's your moment to shine.
Well, they've got two of the best attacking combo. I mean, as far as I can tell, and as far as what I know, between Keane and Donovan. And I think that, Donovan's, not that any player's not going to go 100%, but Donovan's going to go 115% because these are the last few games and he's going to want to, go out on top. Yeah. And I think that combination's just a very strong combination and too much for Real Salt Lake.
The only thing I will say about LA is Zardes was pushing, not pushing that team from a leadership sort of point of view, but as far as the goals, was the one that was, helping that team really win. And his production has really slowed at the end of the year. I don't know if teams have figured him out, or I just don't know what was going on. But he was basically non-existent in the Sounders series. Now maybe that's just because the Sounders are the best team in MLS this year, and he won't have a problem against RSL, but. That would be I mean, I picked LA to win, but that's my one concern about LA.
Well,
I assume you saw both the games in the season-ending series with the Sounders, Nate?
Yeah, I watched them. I mean, really, LA's advantage that I think they have over most teams, even the Sounders, and that, I'm homer picking the Sounders to win, but I think if anyone's going to beat them, it's going to be LA. It's because they have a really good defense. I mean, if you can stop Martins and Dempsey, who I think are the best strike duo in the MLS, you have a good chance of winning that game, which
I think
they
I
did.
think they are the best duo. The thing about LA is they have a trio up top.
Yeah.
So, so the Metros, as people, old-time fans of the MLS, will remember that the New York Red Bulls are. And I'm still not entirely sure if they're the New York Red Bulls or Red Bull New York, because I think they used to officially be Red Bull New York, and everybody just called them the Red Bulls, and so they changed it. I'm not really sure, but they definitely used to be Red Bull New York.
Yeah, well, their website refers to them as the Red Bulls, so that's what I'm just going to roll
Maybe they
with.
just decided this is what they do in America, so I don't know. Anyway, so Nate, you think that DC cannot stop Henry and Bradley White Phillips, but we determined before the show that DC has the season series over New York. So do you think the partnership with Henry and Bradley White Phillips has just gotten that much stronger as the season has gone on, or?
Well, I just think it's been strong, and even though I'm kind of going against what I said with the momentum earlier, DC has not looked that good at the end of the season. I mean,
They haven't looked that good all year. I mean, they're like a grinded out team.
Yeah, but in a 2-game series, especially with the Red Bull scoring, what was it? I think they have like a plus 20 something differential at home, or no, it's only a plus 15, but they've scored 38 goals at home. I think they can win the series just by scoring enough there, and maybe playing for a draw in DC. Like that, they play in New York first. New York has the advantage from that standpoint to try and score those goals right away. Just see kind of what happens.
Yeah. So apparently DC's offense is pretty good on the road. They have 24 road goals and 28 home goals, but their defense is not that great. Although their road goal differential is only -1, which is the best. Is the best in the East, and the only two teams that are better are LA and Sounders. Actually, the
Timbers are better too.
Yeah, the Portland Timbers, apparently, who did not make the playoffs at all, are apparently amazing on the road.
Am I right in saying that Sporting KC also has a positive road goal differential, but they're out of the playoffs now?
Oh yeah,
Yes, they are too.
I see that now. So, so Kansas City had the best in the East, but they're no longer alive. So.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned LA with Donovan on his last hurrah. This could be Henry's last hurrah too, and he might have some extra incentive to go out on top, which may push the Red Bulls a little further over DC, who doesn't quite have that. I mean, yes, they want to win the cup. Who doesn't? But is there that little extra, hey, let's win one for the Gipper kind of thing going on there?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can see is that they're going to have it in their mind that if they can get past New York, at some point they're going to get Silva back. So there'll be that like push in that respect to know that like they don't have all their pieces right now, but like once Silva comes back, DC is going to have a really, I mean, assuming that Eddie Johnson is still playing well, and Silva was playing as well as he was before he got injured. They have a really nice attack when all their pieces are there, and they're really deep. So
I mean, honestly, I think if DC wins, they're going to the final. It's just I picked Red Bull.
Right, fair enough. So on the other side, the one versus play-in is Sounders and Dallas. Again, all three of us picked the Sounders. Dallas earlier in the season was sort of, the black horse to. Is black horse the right?
Dark horse.
Dark horse. Yeah, black is a type of dark, but yeah, this coffee cup still has a lot of coffee in it. So I just don't see it happening. Obviously, none of us do. The Sounders are the best team in the MLS this year. Is there any argument to be made that Dallas can win this?
Well, I mean, Seattle, it looks like Seattle of the remaining playoff teams has given up the most goals. And, I mean, they've given up 50, which is more than any other team left in the playoffs except for the Red Bulls. their home goal differential is 15, which is on par with everybody else except for the Galaxy, which is blowing everybody out at home. And their road goal differential is probably where they have the best record, is because they've held even on the road. So I mean, I honestly haven't seen much of them play except for the few times that they've been on NBC, but looking at that, it doesn't look like they're that much better than everybody else.
Well,
I mean,
no, I mean they had to win in the final game. Well, they didn't have to win; they had to win or draw in the final game to win the Supporters Shield. So they're not that much better, at least than LA. So,
well, and I think what helps them too is they've gotten a little bit tougher than I think they've been in the past. I mean, they had some of those big games against Portland, like the one where they were down 4-2, came back, tied it up at 4 apiece. The first LA Sounders game to end the season there went down 2-0, came back and won it. I think their advantage is that if they're never out. If they can hold off and score a bunch of goals, they'll be fine. I just don't think Dallas can stop Martins and Dempsey.
right. So in the Eastern Conference Finals, we all have a different team representing the East in the West Cup. So DC was the best team in the East. I'm just going to stop my defense there. Evan, why are the Revs going to be the Eastern Conference champions?
Weird things happen in sports. I mean, you never can truly predict what's going to happen, and so I'm just going to pick a team. Honestly, now that I was looking at stuff, I could see a case for the Crew winning that game and then the Crew making the Eastern Conference Finals.
You think it's going to be 2-3 no matter what?
Yeah.
No, fair enough. Both of those teams have momentum going in, so that makes some sense.
Yeah, and soccer not so much as in other sports like baseball, but momentum can mean something or it could mean nothing. In baseball, it's usually the hot team that plays hard to get that wild card spot carries that momentum in. But in soccer, it doesn't seem like momentum has ever meant much, at least as far as what I've, in my short career of watching soccer. So I don't know if momentum has anything to do with it or not. I just think the East is much more wide open than the West, and something could happen that we're not truly ready for.
I think that's a fair assessment of the East versus the West. Nate, Red Bulls?
I mean, once again, I just think that they can outscore everybody. I'm a firm believer, and if you score in the Madden style, if you can score more points than the other guy, you're going to win.
I'm a firm believer in that as well. All right, so I get to my little point about the final, I guess, after we talk about the Western Conference Finals, but it's mostly aimed at Western Conference, so I'll mention it right after we talk about this. So LA, I just think that, sort of in the Henry, I guess I'm not as convinced that this is Henry's last hurrah. So I'm not as convinced as that'll be motivation. I mean, it's sort of like wishy-washy. Like, is it Henry's last? We don't even know. But Donovan, this is definitely his. Although he might pull a Paul Scholes and come back. Who knows? I mean, he's young enough where he could certainly do that. But I just think,
32, something like that.
Right. So I just think that that's going to be extra incentive. Bruce Arena and a lot of those players have done this plenty of times before. Not that Ziggy Smith hasn't, but he hasn't been able to put it together in Seattle. So I think LA is going to make it through the Western. I mean, I think the reasoning for the Sounders is pretty obvious. But if you want to talk some more about the Sounders, Nate.
I mean, honestly, I'm very pessimistic on this front. The Sounders haven't had success in the past in the playoffs. It's very difficult when you've won the double. Like, no team's ever won the treble in MLS. Exhausting season. It's more of a hope kind of thing. We did beat them on the last game. We held them to 2 a pop, but the last game they were without Omar. They didn't play Keane. So it's kind of hard to tell where LA really stands without those two guys. They do have, once again, they have the best defense in MLS. If they can stop Martins and Dempsey, and Seattle's defense, obviously based on the goals they've allowed, is not exactly a a brick wall. If it gets out of hand too quick, LA's going through. Like I said, I think my hope is Seattle wins, but if I was really honest, LA's probably going to win.
So you mentioned that no team has ever won the treble, but I put a few notes in here, just going through this, the previous winners. And since 2003, only 2 teams have won the Supporters Shield and the playoffs or MLS Cup, and only once in that time has a team that won the Open Cup won the playoffs. So both of those strikes are going against Seattle. I mean, history is history. It's not this year.
There's a first time for everything.
Exactly. But and then since 2009, only one team, the Galaxy in 2011, has won either of those and even made it to the final. So, there's a lot of history being. I mean, people that do not follow the MLS and hearing that from like other leagues, they'll be like, whatever, that was 5 years ago. Whatever, that was 11 years ago. But in a league that's 20 years old, that's like, more than half of the history.
Yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So. It's really hard to do. So I think the accomplishment that the Sounders will have achieved, will be pretty incredible if they're able to do it. So that's not to say that they can't do it, but it just should be highlighted.
I mean, I will say I really wish I could be at those games though, because the atmosphere is going to be nuts.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's no way. I guess they should have fallen further down the standings. That way they could have come out east. So but there's no way if they make it to the final that they're not going to be hosting. So
yeah.
And speaking of hosts, if anybody except LA or Sounders makes it to the final, and DC also makes it to the final, DC will host. But none of us think that's going to happen. We think it's going to be LA or the Sounders. So it'll be held out west. It sounds like. We didn't say, but I guess we should go back and say that for TV coverage. So in the past, I always talked about like the stream of the week because I don't have cable. So like it was always NBC or the MLS stream of the week. So MLS is not doing stream of the week during the playoffs. So the Columbus Rev series is on Univision, I think that's what it's called. Anyway, UDN is what it is.
Yeah, it's Univision Deportes.
And then the RSL LA series is on NBC Sports and then ESPN2. And then the Metros versus DC is on Deportes and then NBC for the second leg. The Dallas Sounders is ESPN2, then NBC Sports. And the TV coverage for the Eastern and Western Conference Finals has not been decided yet. And the MLS Cup Finals is going to be on.
Well, it looks like, at least according to what I'm looking at, they got NBC and ESPN are splitting most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are splitting most of it. I don't know when Univision Deportes gets their action, but
yeah. Well, it looks like ESPN has 3 games, NBC has 1, and NBC Sports has another.
For the conference finals?
Yeah.
Maybe they filled that out because I hadn't looked at it in a couple of days. So.
I mean, I don't know if my information is accurate. I'm just looking at the Reddit page where they have all this up, but that's what they have down.
Well, there is in the show notes a link to the official MLS Cup 2014 schedule on MLSsoccer.com, and it still doesn't have TV listed for Eastern or Western Conference. So maybe they've announced that somewhere else.
Yeah. They might have to wait to see which teams are there. Right. I don't know if it's a situation where one broadcaster gets first dibs on certain teams or not. But that might be what they're waiting for, and they might just be waiting for who gets the better matchup. Like, so everybody's probably going to want the Sounders and Galaxy, so they're going to wait.
That was the highest rated soccer game, or MLS game at least, on NBC ever, was that last game.
So that might be what they're waiting for. They might know who gets how many, but they don't know who gets which one yet.
Yeah.
So I don't think we actually said this. We sort of danced around it. But Evan and I both have LA picked for the winning the MLS Cup, and Nate has the Sounders. I think we've pretty much already discussed the reasons why that we think that's going to happen. So that will be a Sounders versus New York series for Nate, and it'll be LA versus DC for me, and LA versus either the Revs or the Crew for Evan. So, but regardless, we have MLS Cup going back out west. So, I've got a couple of links in here again for people that are interested in a little bit more. But I think that's going to do it for us here today. Is there anything else before we go that either of you want to say?
Go Sounders.
All right. On that, this has been the Free Culture Sports Show. You can check us out patreon.com/FCSS. Thanks for watching.